Okay, so before we begin round 2 of melee over here, we've got a few things to handle. First, I have not wrapped around the red heavy foot to take on these arquebuses here. Also, when I brought these heavy foot from blue into combat, the distance I used was 6, and that's incorrect. I need to go back and check the rule on that. And lastly, even though their impetus was spent brushing aside some skirmishers in a melee, they still were doing a cavalry charge. So we need to resolve this morale check. And I think of the 3 things that are going to be most impactful for everyone, it's to find out what this morale check is going to be. So let's take a look at it now. I think that was going to be on page 19, no, 17. Cavalry charge. To withstand heavy foot, withstanding a cavalry charge from heavy, 9 or better. They have their army commander, so it's going to be 8 or better. They're not fatigued. The cavalry was not fatigued when they began their move. So, and fatigue doesn't factor in on the red side. So 9 or better, big roll. I'm rolling with my left hand. This might be bad. Let's see what happens. Oh, 10. Never mind, this will take place. Okay, so we are about to start turn 11 melee round 2, except for the fact that since we are tracking fatigue by melee round, and it might factor in, I really think I ought to apply fatigue at this point just for my own mental clarity. So I'm reviewing back the orders here. So the heavy foot hero is off the board, so that doesn't matter. The heavy foot were supposed to charge, so they will incur a charge marker, which is blue. So at this point, they are more than fully fatigued. They also engaged in 1 round of melee, which is a purple marker. So I don't know if you can see this, but we've got red, purple, and blue now on them. The cannon are reloading despite the fact that they're pointed in the wrong direction. So the crew are the 2 green blocks here on the rear end, and so they're reloading. No fatigue, and they actually will clear fatigue because they did not move this turn so far. The heavy horse were supposed to charge the heavy foot, which they did engage in a charge. You recall what has happened here. So we're going to give them a blue marker for the charge, and we're going to give them a purple marker for engaging in 1 round of melee, because if you remember, the skirmishers fled and then they were contacted after they failed their cavalry morale check. Then they engaged in melee with the skirmishers, blew them away, wasted their impetus, and now here they are with the heavy foot. Okay, so that's heavy horse. The heavy horse hero has the exact same fatigue because he is not detached. The armored foot did a full advance forward, so this factors into their ability to be drawn into melee. I'm kind of glad I'm reviewing the orders at this point. If I flip over here to our favorite table, which is the miscellaneous melee information, after the first round of melee, excess troops, nope, different issue. Units within 3 inches may be drawn into it if the player to whom they belong so desires. I didn't technically receive any orders about those armored foot either. However, the unit that joins Smolley cannot have been moved over 1/2 its normal movement. Well, these guys, movement, I wish I could pronounce things. These guys moved, according to orders, a full advance, so they cannot be drawn into this melee. Next, I'm supposed to assign them some fatigue, right? We're doing fatigue. Fatigue, they have 1 that was a full advance, that bumps them to 3, sorry, that bumps them to 3. The arquebuses, they fired, which incurs nothing. They didn't move on purpose. they have 2 melee markers already, and they engaged in 2 rounds. Well, they engaged in 1 round of melee so far, so this will be their... So last round they incurred another purple marker. Come on, having trouble here. So that takes them to 3 rounds of melee so far. Interesting, all their movement has been related to reacting to melee. Someday maybe a blog post about how the melee marker might subsume the assumed movement. Okay, that's it for those guys. Blue guys, Eastern skirmishers, they moved more than 6 inches. So I already said they were going to incur a fatigue marker this turn. Let's see. Eastern handgunners stood and fired, but they have engaged in 1 round of melee, in addition to the round that they had previously endured from last turn. They get another purple marker, taking them to 2 rounds of melee. Let's see. Heavy crossbow charged, which we said they could not charge because they charged last turn, so they just get a movement marker to go with the 2 rounds of melee that they have already. Center block of blue skirmishers no longer exist. Western block of 5 skirmishers charge handgunners in the flank. That wasn't technically a charge because they had charged last turn, so that was a move instead. Heavy foot wheel, and I don't think they got to the point where they went beyond half, because otherwise I couldn't have drawn them into the melee. So they don't get a movement marker at this point. They have engaged so far in, technically they've engaged in 1 round of melee. So here we go with a marker for these guys. I might at some point split this unit. I don't know how I feel about that right now. Armored foot stand fast. So they will clear all 4 of these fatigue counters. Probably a very smart move, as I can see that being the decisive unit on the board right now. Heavy horse 1, wheel and charge. So they get a charge marker and a melee marker because they engaged in 1 round of melee. So charge marker, melee marker. And these guys simply moved. Okay. Eastern cannon reload, Western cannon fire. So no fatigue, no fatigue. All right, guys, I think that's it for the fatigue portion of round 1. So now that fatigue is resolved, let me clean up this area over here. Looking at the grand scheme of things here, let's handle this one first. This is 2 heavy horse versus 2 skirmishers that are facing that way. So they're being flanked. I don't know that that matters. Flank attack. Units attacking with the flank are next higher. Okay, so these guys are next higher class. So, I don't think we gave them that. We gave them the impetus bonus, but I don't think we gave them flank attack bonus last time. That's okay, we'll make up for it. So that'll bump them back up to 5 dice per man, I'm going to say, with the +1 for their hero. Are they fatigued at this point, though? They've done 2 moves, a charge, and a melee. Let's see, are they fatigued? 2 consecutive turns of move, charged, and melee. That actually is fatigued. So I'll cash in these tokens. I don't know, we've got a zoo game, Zootopia. I feel like I'm playing Zootopia with these different markers here. So those guys are fully fatigued at this point. Let's get a red marker. Hard to distinguish these red from purple, but this is a red marker for these guys. Okay, so they're fully fatigued. So a fatigued unit. they attack at the next lower value. So they bumped up for hitting the flank, they bumped back down for being fully fatigued. Morale value drops. Now let's see about the people they oppose. Meleeing 3 rounds, so these guys are also fully fatigued at this point. So they will defend at the next lower, whatever that means. So I think we're just going to essentially end up offsetting that. So we're going to bump the horse back up, I think is what happens. Okay. So both of them are fatigued. They're attacking on the side. So the fatigue I'm going to offset. Take that out of the equation. They're attacking from the flank, so they bump up to the next higher. And there is nothing higher than heavy horse. And they get a +1. So I'm going to say 5 dice per men. 2 men are in contact, so that's going to be 10 dice. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Anyway, you slice this, those 2 guys are dead on the flank. Now, they do get their chops going back the other way. In this case, I think it's 1 die per 4 men. I think we've done this already before, didn't we? Lightfoot versus heavy horse, 1 dice per 4 men. Yeah, we did this before, so we're going to roll 2 dice. We're going to have them, and then we're going to push. No, we're going to roll 1 dice, sorry. 1 die, we're going to have it, and then add in for the army commander. But again, I don't think that's going to do anything since they rolled a 1. Definitely not. So they take 2 casualties. They are, okay, so let's run through them post-melee morale. So that's because these might fill in if we continue melee. So the blue side gets 2 because they inflicted 2 more casualties. We then multiply that by a dice roll. 2 times 5, that means we're going to be saying 10. 10 for step 1. Step 2, these guys had 2 more survivors, so they get 2 more points. Step 3, each of those heavy horse, and again, fatigue being offset here. We're just going to keep it simple. We're going to call that 10 points versus 0 points are left on the opposing side. I think I'm doing this right. Yeah. I am, because there are no survivors on their side in contact, so another 10. So 1, 2, 3, that's going to be 10, 22, doubling it, that's going to be 44. Come on. Am I recording this nonsense? Yes, I am. 44. Back 1 move in good order. Okay, so they were already in the process of doing a retreat back 1 move in good order. They can't go anywhere. This guy can't be pulled into melee. These heavy horse couldn't wrap around, right? Because they retreated, then they recontacted. Next round, the 3rd round, they could potentially wrap around, so that doesn't come into play at this point. Oh, prisoners. We'll make our lives easier if we handle the prisoner situation. They're giving up at least 1 because that's a retreat. And then we also have the potential to give up more. They're going to roll at least 1 on their die roll here. They got a 2. This guy is a prisoner too. So we've got 2 casualties, 2 prisoners from this melee, and then the remaining movement that's left. And I don't think he had much left to give. So let's just leave him there for now. Okay, so the heavy horse had to give up yet another guard. The armored foot is not able to be drawn into that melee. I'm going to assume that they're not quite in contact yet, just so that this ends at a logical place right now. And I'll go ahead and put another fatigue marker on him. So he's fully fatigued, plus he engaged in another round of melee right here. Okay. I'm a little bit out of sorts here about what to do next. I think the next easiest thing to tackle is going to be this heavy foot combat over here in the west. So let's go through the factors here. Let's look at fatigue for the first of all, let's take a look at the fatigue here. So this guy, those heavy horsemen now have moved 3, charged, and meleeed. I think that means they're fatigued. Move 2, charge, and melee. Yes, so move 2, a charge, and a melee. That equals 1 fatigue. So these guys are fully fatigued, a little bit beyond fully fatigued at this point. Next thing we need to talk about is what about on this side? They've moved 3 times and meleeed once. Move 3 and melee once does not trigger this. So the heavy footmen are not fatigued. They have pikes, so these guys have impetus. This is a flank attack, this is a front attack. So let's handle the flank attack with impetus first. Oh yeah, and this is just a marker meaning, hey, you've got to do a melee here. All right. So, flip to the combat table. And it says all troops formed in close order with pole arms can only suffer frontal melee casualties from troops armed with like weapons, while a knight armed with a lance could attack them. So, oh, he could attack a halberd formation. He cannot attack a formation of pikes. Interesting. So, close order. They're still in close order in that portion. Can only suffer frontal melee casualties from troops armed with like weapons. Okay, so that takes those guys actually out of this equation. Interesting. But the flank attack is still going to matter. So we're doing 2 heavy horse. So heavy horse versus heavy foot. But the heavy horse are downgraded 1 because they are fatigued. So heavy horse downgrades to armored foot, I believe, not medium horse. Let's take a look. So medium horse versus heavy foot is 2 dice per man. Armored foot versus heavy foot is 1 dice per man. Yeah, I think it's probably downgrade to medium horse then. So medium horse versus heavy foot. Oh, but they're on the flank, so that bumps them back up to heavy horse. Never mind. Heavy horse versus heavy foot. 3 dice per man. The flank attack offsets the fatigue, and we need to add on the impetus. So instead of 3 dice per man, it's going to be 4 dice per man, 5 or 6 kills. But there's still 3 dice per man, 4 dice per man, 4 dice per man, 5 or 6 kills. But their hero, technically, this is an abstraction that we've done. I think they get the hero bonus too. That's, even without the hero bonus, that's infliction of 2 casualties over here on the corner by the heavy horse. Now, did the heavy foot inflict any casualties in return? Let's take a look. So they're not fatigued, so it's going to be heavy foot versus heavy horse. 1 die per 4 men, 6 kills. So they've only got 2 men on these flankers, so I'm going to give them 1 dice divided in half. That's going to be a 2, plus 1 for the army commander is going to be a 3. That's no casualties on the flank. Now on the front, they can make their casualties potentially. Actually, yeah, let's do this. So on the front, 1 dice. They rolled a 1, forget about it. They inflict nothing on the heavy horse on that side either. That handles the western portion of this combat for round 2. Now let's move on to these guys. My brain is getting a little foggy now. Let me pause the video and grab some water. Okay, resuming recording. Let's handle the front for the first part of this as quickly as possible. Oh yeah, I need to give these guys another melee marker so they're more than fatigued. These guys, I'm not going to give a melee marker yet because I'm considering them as a whole unit at this point. Okay. 2 rounds of melee for these arquebuses. Again, the arquebuses across the board have been just performing phenomenally. I don't know, I think they're Viggo Morgenstern inspired here. Okay. And then they're facing heavy footmen that are definitely fatigued, but not yet doubly fatigued. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of these guys in contact front to front. So Lightfoot, we'll do the blue side. Lightfoot, it's going to be versus Heavyfoot that's been downgraded. So Lightfoot versus Lightfoot, 1 die per man, 6 kills. Their hero was, the red hero was detached from the unit. So unlike the hero that's an army commander, once that hero detached to do the combat, which has wrapped up now, by the way, once that hero detached, his unit no longer benefited from his presence, unlike the army commander, which continues to exert a command influence. Okay, now that that's settled. Lightfoot versus Lightfoot, 1 die per man, 6 kills. I'm rolling 4 dice, and I'm going to roll with a +1 for the army commander. And that is going to be 2 kills. I'm going to take these off the end, and that reminds me I need to wrap these guys around. Maybe I shouldn't take them off the end, but I'm going to take them off the end nonetheless, just to make it easy for me to remember what the heck is going on. Okay. So that was red attacking, or I'm sorry, that was blue attacking red. Now coming back the other way, Lightfoot versus Lightfoot, because they're downgraded, and they get no +1s. They get 4 rolls, and they need 6s to kill. And they got a kill. So they scored a kill. So they're going to take one of these arquebuses away. So now, let's do, we're not doing post-melee morale checks yet, because we still have to deal with this nonsense down here. So again, we've got 1, 2, Heavyfoot, unfatigued versus 2 Heavyfoot fatigued. So it's going to be Heavyfoot versus Lightfoot. Heavyfoot versus Lightfoot, 1 die per man, 5 or 6 kills. But they've got the benefit of their army commander, so 4 through 6 kills. That's going to be 2 kills right there. So these 2 are dead. And I guess I should take these out and put this back at the end, okay? That's what we're going to do temporarily. Okay, so there's no more, there's nothing else to attack there. These guys are on the flank. 2 Heavyfoot, unfatigued, on the flank of those Heavyfoot. 1 die per man, 5 or 6 kills. So it's 4 through 6 kills. And it's actually an extra die per man because they're armed with pikes. So they've got 2 men in contact. So it's 2 dice per man. And instead of 5 or 6 killing, it's going to be 4 through 6 killing. 2 kills. So these 2 are eliminated. But I think what we have to do now is these 2 hitting back the other way, these 2 hitting the front, and we know they're treated as Lightfoot, so it's 1 die per 4 men. I'm just going to roll 1 die and they get no bonuses at all, but they might inflict a casualty going back the other way. Is that correct? Not really, no. Yeah, one of those can't participate. I think I'm just going to roll one dice and have it. And yeah, that's not enough. They're not going to be able to do any casualties going back the other way, because on a frontal attack, because these guys have pikes, they can't inflict a casualty from that guy. That leaves them 3 guys left being attacked on the flank, really. They got a 2. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They get nothing. Okay. You get nothing, sir. Now, these 2 guys are actually enemies as well. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. These 2 were attacking in the rear, so they get to attack. Again, 2 dice per man because they're pikemen. They're attacking the rear. There's no possibility of a reply attack from those guys. And those are pretty universally bad rolls. So despite having those tremendous advantages and their army commander, that is, and being bumped up, right? So they would have been heavy foot. They would have been bumped up to armored foot versus light foot. 1 die per man, 4 to 6 kills. 4 to 6 kills, plus the army commander. Oh, 1, 2, 3, they did 2 the kills. So 2 more casualties off of that block. Now, if I was not a real glutton for punishment, I would say instability. These guys are removed. I think we're at the threshold now where they're beyond help. So those are on the blue team. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 times 2 is 32%. At this point, that unit could be removed from play. I'm going to go ahead and do the morale calculation, though. Do I need to? I don't want to, guys. I think we're going to go with the fact that they have now reached the 2nd threshold for being removed due to morale, and really they're treated as lightfoot, so well below being combat effective. I'm taking them off the board at this point. I apologize if you disagree and wanted to see me try to do more math, more grade level math, because you're bored with life. Okay. Let's assume they give up 1 more as a prisoner, right? Let's assume we did the calculation and they gave up 1 for being retreated or routed. And we would have to do a prisoner die roll too. I think it'll count for victory points. 3, because this is foot versus foot, right? It's universally foot versus foot this time. So we're going to take the winner's die, which would be blue. It's going to be 3 casualties further, or 3 more prisoners. So 1, 2, 3 in addition. So these are prisoners. These were casualties. I think this was casualties on the... Yeah, that was casualties on their side. Okay, so they're off the board. Pausing this now to clean things up and put them in the right admin buckets. Okay, I've added a fatigue marker for another round of melee to the entire unit now. Also to these arquebuses, although this lone guy over here is not. That's 3 rounds of continuous melee for them, so they are effectively fatigued at this point. And I think I was supposed to have a marker that they've shot, but I'm too tired to think about that right now. Anyway, it's been fun. I am not interested in creating an extra melee where none was intended and where the rules did not permit him to be pulled in, even though it looks like they're really adjacent to each other. We're going to leave it now for you guys to clean up this mess with your next orders phase. Okay guys, I've decided instead of reviewing the tape and trying to do a massive calculation for this heavy foot, I'm going to treat this as 2 separate units. We know what happened over there. Yeah. And these guys did not charge. They were pulled in, so we're going to treat this as being a separate entity from these heavy foot over here for purposes of post-melee morale calculations. So, easy peasy. It makes my brain a lot less likely to explode. The side with fewer casualties, in that case, that would be this heavy horse unit, determines the positive difference between losses. So there's a 2 difference to the red side for this part of the engagement, multiplied by a dice roll, which I believe gets bumped up by that hero. Let's see, it's like on the second page after the fantasy section starts. Heroes. Add 1 to the dire dice of their unit. Heroes. Add 1 to the dire dice of their unit. Yeah, so that's going to be 6 times 2. That's going to be 12 for step 1 for those guys. Step 2, we look at the raw number of survivors. Greatest number of surviving troops, positive difference. So they have 4 survivors, whereas the enemy only has 2. That's a difference of 2. Then we take the same thing, except for we're going to be doing it now, multiplying the surviving figures. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Those guys were fatigued, weren't they? So, but they've got their hero, but that doesn't matter. We're going to treat them as fatigue. We're going to treat them as light. So 1, 2, 3, 4 light, so that's going to be 16 points surviving versus 10 points for the 2 surviving heavies. So that's going to be a positive difference of 6. Tell me if you disagree in the comments. So that was step 3. We do the totals. So nothing on the blue side for this little bit of the engagement. So that's going to be 18. That's going to be 20. We're going to double it. That's going to be 40. That's going to be back 1 move in good order. And we talked about this before. We're not moving the whole unit. We're just going to move these 2 guys that were survivors from any contact. So back in good order. What does it say? One move in good order. So 1 move for a heavy footman is 9. What we're going to do is some creativity here. We're going to take these 2 guys out of the back and move them 9 in good order. And we're going to just move this whole shooting match down this way. That was not a melee continues, and therefore we can officially wrap up turn number 11. I've already applied the melee fatigue marker, already talked about fatigue there. These guys, I already applied the fatigue, I'm pretty sure. If I didn't, we'll figure it out. Anyway, I am done with turn 11, finally. Good night and good riddance. A quick coda on this. So the heavy horse, if you remember way back, we measured and it was going to be 15 for them to reach the edge of the heavy foot during their movement. They were charging. They must carry out the balance. So I'm going to recombine their unit and move them forward 3 more inches. There. Okay guys, good morning. I've been encouraged to move forward with round 3 of melee, and I have gotten some rest, so it doesn't seem quite as daunting today. First, let's handle some simple admin catch-up here. So I had gone back and reviewed the tape on these guys. These heavy horsemen, to complete their charge move, they need to move forward an additional 2 centimeters. 2 inches. Good grief. Come on. Because of the previous decisions that I've made here, the 3rd round of melee will not involve these armored footmen. But there's no longer a unit in retreat that's hit them because those guys disappeared. So I don't think they're going to have to rally in the next turn. All right. We have also forgotten to handle these skirmishers for blue. They're down to 4. The original size of that unit, if you recall, was 12. Lightfoot make checks at 25% losses, so at 75 they should have had a check, and at 50 they should have been removed. They're well beyond 50 at this point, so these skirmishers are coming off the map at this point and will be over in the pile of points to be sorted through later. Okay, so those guys are off the table. The other correction that had to be done is that this red heavy horse is going to engage in another round of melee, and the retreated blue heavyfoot were actually subject to the prisoner rule. Now this was a retreat, and then there would be a dice roll. This would have been horse versus foot, so I think I've got to roll 2 dice. So 1 dice for the blue is a 4, dice for the red is a 2. Let's check that prisoner rule out right now. I think we're looking around page 17, yes. So winner was, I guess the winner in this case was horse versus foot. Both die are added together. So 6 additional prisoners plus the 1. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one. So 1. And they can only hit people, well, let's just take it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, because they've taken a grand total now of 7 prisoners, they actually have to give up 2 guards. So let's get these guys out now as well. This could actually work more to yellow's advantage. And I think at this point, their impetus is, their charge, their movement is completely spent because I had moved them forward into contact. So actually, I don't think we're going to get a 3rd round of melee, because the previous result, yeah, that's right. There can't be a 3rd round of melee because we achieved a retreat result, so there will be no 3rd round of melee. So actually, it's just a little bit of admin work here. All right, I will post this very soon. Let me know what your orders are. Thank you very much.